Jersey's own Zach Gelb.
Or maybe it's Pennsylvania. Anyhow, it's one of the two, I'm pretty sure.
The Zach Gelb Show continues
On Fox Sports 920, The Jersey.
5:25 from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios. Mini camp winding down. Before we know it, it will be July for training camp as we're getting ready for the Giants and Eagles season. If you're a Jet fan, not much to look forward to until the NFL draft. And now joining us, one of the best NFL reporters in the business, covers everything in the NFL, based out of New York with Newsday. And that, of course, is the great Bob Glauber, who's kind enough to join us right now. Bob, appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how are you?
I'm great, Zach. Thanks for having me. Sorry I'm late. And, hey, who says there's nothing to root for with the Jets? I was out there today. They look great.
Give me a legitimate positive thing that this team has going forward this year.
Leonard Williams.
Okay, anything else?
I think Mo Wilkerson will be better.
How about Adams at safety?
Adams. Jamal Adams is, I'll tell you, he really looks like he's going to be pretty good. I'm not going to pronounce him great. It's too early. But just watching him today in practice, you look for players at this time of the year and in training camp, you look for the players who flash, guys who stand out for one reason or another. And this guy stood out. And he has stood out through most of the practices. Same kind of stuff. Jumping in front of guys, disrupting a pass route, intercepting a pass. Now, look, the Jets quarterbacks are nothing to speak of, but you can see a guy who kind of has it. And this guy, he bounces off the screen in the film room, and he certainly stands out in practice. So I think there are a couple of good young players on this team. It's going to be a bad year. There's just no doubt. But they do have a couple of good young players, and you're right. It is all about 2018 and all about the quarterback that they do take then. And I can't imagine that they won't take a quarterback at some level next year, and perhaps with the number one pick.
If they go 2-14, 3-13, we already know the fan base is fed up with Todd Bowles. But if they go 2 or 3 wins, what does it say for the future next year with Maccagnan and then also Bowles?
Well, Zach, I would think Maccagnan has more of a shot to stay if they bottom out like that. I don't know that Bowles could survive 2-14. Maybe if this was his first year, but it's not. It's his third, and it's a weird spot for him. I do not envy him in the least because he's in no win. If he goes 6-10, all right, you know what? He did a really good job with a.
That's a great job. 6-10 is a great job
with a very limited roster. And if he goes 2-14, you say, what do you got to start over? So I think at this point, Maccagnan would probably have the better shot to hire his own coach. And, they kind of inherited each other. It's a bit of a weird power structure with the Jets because both Maccagnan and Bowles report directly to Woody Johnson. So neither has more power than the other. So that's a little bit odd in today's NFL. But I would think in that scenario, Bowles would not survive and Maccagnan would have a chance.
You've been doing this for a long time, and I was at the NovaCare Complex today watching the Eagles, and a lot of reporters are overreacting that Carson Wentz has had a few wobbly throws in OTAs and minicamp, and Doug Peterson said there's no concern with the quarterback. He actually went 11-12 in practice the other day, but some reporters are making a big deal the way he's throwing the football. How much overreacting do you do, Bob Glauber, in minicamp?
Wait, Zach, you're saying there's overreaction in Philadelphia?
I know, not a shocker. Hey, that's why you're the pro. That's why you're the vet.
Look it, as Bill Parcells would say, look it. I like Carson Wentz a lot. I think he's got a very strong arm. I think he's got the it factor for a quarterback. I think he's a great leader. I think people gravitate toward him and look to him. I like him. I like him a lot, and I think he projects very, very well over his NFL career. I'm not going to worry about a couple of wobbly passes in June in minicamp or in OTAs. I'm just not going to do it. The guy showed something last year. He showed something with a terrible receiving crew. Terrible. I mean, he had nothing to work with. And now he's got some weapons, and they're going to give him some help. LeGarrette Blount, I think, will help in the running game, maybe open a little play-action passing game for the guy. and let's see what happens. But I'm looking forward to watching Carson Wentz develop. Listen, you have to give him credit for being the starting quarterback last year and for prompting the team to trade Sam Bradford in the first place. And they don't make that trade unless they see something Carson Wentz that allows them to see a quarterback who can withstand the early bumps and bruises that every rookie goes through and every young quarterback goes through. And I think he can survive that and develop quite nicely, and in a very, very tough market that's extremely demanding. Evidence no greater than what that reaction is today, the overreaction of a couple of wobbly passes in training camp, in minicamp.
Now, I'll tell you this, and you were at the draft and you heard all the booing. Right now, everyone's in their car, Bob, and they're applauding you because that was a great explanation. A big round of applause right there because this is a situation today. I started off the show, I said it's absolutely ridiculous with these wobbly throws and everything. Bob Glauber with us right now. The pecking order in the NFC East right now, how would you evaluate that?
NFC East, well, by the way, just one little PS on wobbly passes. You know who was throwing a lot of wobbly passes over his entire career, and people kind of got on him for it?
Who?
Peyton Manning.
Yeah, he's a pretty good quarterback, right?
He's pretty good. It worked out.
Not better than that Brady guy, though, I'll say.
No. Now, Brady's not a wobbler. He is a dart thrower, so he didn't wobble his passes, but Peyton did, especially toward the end of his career. The pecking order in the NFC East, I would say right now, I'm going to say Dallas and the Giants are even. I am going to say that because I think the Giants, it really depends on Eli Manning. If he is showing signs of severe regression, then I'll pull back on that. But I think they're a really good team. I think they got better in the offseason. Their defense is very good, and they got some offensive weapons in the offseason. Having Brandon Marshall opposite Odell Beckham will help everybody, and I think it'll help Eli Manning as well. Of course, I like the Cowboys. You got to like what they did last year. Sometimes teams that make a tremendous improvement from one year to the next kind of fall back a little bit. So don't discount that. And then I pick Washington. I think they're solid. I still need to see if they're going to make that commitment to Kirk Cousins. He'll play through that one-year contract. He did it last year. He'll do it again, and he'll be okay. And then I probably put Philly fourth at this point, just because they're still a work in progress, second-year coach. But I think they'll make some improvement, and I think they'll give their fans and themselves, some legitimate optimism of laying a foundation for this long-term future, and that's what you want to do. You want to have this long-term, but it's going to be a very competitive division. So cracking that top two or three is going to be a little bit tough. So I still think they're a work in progress, and they got a little ways to go compared to the rest of the division.
Didn't you just know a few moments ago the fans were applauding you? Now they're booing you in Philadelphia.
It's okay.
Come on, Bob.
Right. It's up and down. Hey, it's euphoria or disaster.
Yes. You went from having a Barack Obama approval rating to a Donald Trump approval rating in a matter of seconds.
They could go 8-8 and still finish fourth in this division.
Very possible, and that's a good year.
Right? 8-8 would be, I think, would be okay. Certainly not playoffs, but. And Washington is a kind of team that it's weird to kind of figure out what they're all about. So I could see Philly jumping them a little bit, maybe Washington finishing fourth. I think the Giants are legit good, again, with the Eli Manning caveat. And Dallas, I think the division is much more even than it was last year. Dallas kind of ran away with things, and the Giants hung in there, to get that wild card spot. I think it's a more even division, and for that reason, I think it can be topsy-turvy. I don't think the Eagles have enough to win it, but if you got an even division, hey, that's why you play, and you never know. So I think it's going to be a really compelling division.
At this point with the Eagles, I have them about 8-9 wins, probably 10 if everything goes right, which I don't think it will. My order, my range is from 8 to 9, and this season is really just we want to see the improvement with Carson Wentz. That's what this all season is about. With that being said, though, in your pecking order, you have the Cowboys and Giants as even. The big concern with me, as everyone's concerned with the Giants, is the offensive line. Why will this offensive line be good enough to get it done?
Well, I think the main thing is that Eric Flowers is going to be a better player at a better left tackle. Now, if that doesn't happen, I'm wrong. But I think the Giants have seen some improvement in him in the offseason. I think what they did last year was they saw that he got worn down toward the end of games, so they worked on his conditioning. He has lost some weight, and he has worked a lot on technique. You know, offensive linemen in today's NFL, Zach, are really hard-pressed to be as good as they were back in the day. And this is back in the day before the CBA came into being, this one in 2011, because the practice rules really hurt offensive linemen. They cannot develop like they used to. You hear offensive linemen who played before that and played after that, at least had the experience of getting pounded in the offseason and drilled and drilled and drilled. You know, coaches could coach them and get them better. You absolutely need more coaching on the offensive line, perhaps in any other position. You know, of course, quarterback, but that's you got to have talent before you have coaching. But offensive line, if you don't have that learning ability, it's hard to do. And Flowers has been a perfect example of being a victim of that. So I think his technique has improved, and if that is the case, and if that does happen, there'll be a better offensive line. Because Pugh is a perfectly good left guard, and Richburg is very, very good at center. And the right side of the line, John Jerry's a serviceable guard, and there's probably a little bit of uncertainty at right tackle. They got DJ Fluker as a free agent from the Chargers, and he may be able to fill in at right tackle. So I think solid offensive line, certainly better than they had last year, and which should make Eli Manning better. But again, I want to see Eli as a guy who still has something left, rather than a guy who is really showing signs of slippage. And he did show a few signs last year.
Let's take care of Odell Beckham, who I happen to like a lot. He said the current contract situation did not influence his decision to skip the voluntary OTA period. Do you believe him with his explanation?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it was a plausible explanation, and the part that I liked was that he took some time away to really think about things and kind of get away, remove himself, and get his mind right. Now, the thing with Odell is he has talked a good game before. You know, when he was suspended after getting into that brouhaha with Josh Norman when he was with the Panthers, he gets suspended for a game, he puts out a statement, and it was really well said, and it was his words, and, I'm an example to the kids. I can't be doing that. You say, okay, he gets it. And, sometimes it's tough love that you got to go through. You get a suspension like that, and then he comes back the next year, and he starts acting up again, and then, he hits himself in the face with the kicking net that bounces back and hits him, and he gets a couple of penalties the next week against Minnesota. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. But then he says, you know what, I have to control myself. I have to do a better job. He's very open about it. And he behaves himself for most of the rest of the season. Oh, okay, looks like we're good. And then he takes the trip after the game. They beat the Redskins, to solidify that playoff spot. And then he, goes away and gets the picture on the boat on South Beach. Has a terrible game against the Packers. I don't begrudge a guy going away like that, but not a great look, no doubt. But has a terrible game against the Packers and then punches out a wall at Lambeau Field. Well, you know what? He has talked a good game before, and he always goes back. So I need to see definitive proof that the guy is going to back up his words with actions. Now, I will tell you, Zach, he sounded good yesterday. He gave some good explanations, talked about, really trying to mature and trying to think, his way through this thing and grow up. But then today he wears cleats at practice, and he's got the picture of the New York Post emblem on it, ESPN, and it says, shh. He writes S-H-H-H-H, shh. So here we go again.
Just stupid.
Leave it alone.
It's petulant behavior on his part.
It's petulant.
And I happen to like him. I did an event with him, but he's got to grow up. And I think there's sometimes he gets a bad rap, but he has to grow up and he has to be the bigger man in this situation and just ignore all of us in the media and just show up, do his job, and just play his best football. And then there won't be those critics and those haters. What I will say, though, because you did mention the bad look scenario with the OTAs, I think that's a bad look. If he just just didn't tweet out, I'm going to be the most motivated player, I'm going to be the most hardworking player that I've ever been, and let's just say he didn't tweet that out and he wants a new contract, I'm more than fine because he's underpaid right now. But when you tweet that stuff out, you got to show up, because how can you be more motivated than ever, more diligent than ever, and not show up? That's a bad look to me.
That's a bad look, but I think, when you look at the history of football, I mean, there are no significant holdouts anymore. There's just none. Before the current CBA, and I'm talking 1993, before that existed, holdouts were the only way you could get a better contract, and it happened all the time. It was the scourge of the NFL, because training camp would be ruined. And I'll tell you that maybe the greatest defensive player in NFL history never showed up in the off season, and that's Lawrence Taylor. Never. It didn't lift a weight. Showed up for mini camp, went back on the golf course, showed up for training camp, and dominated the NFL. So you can find examples of guys who have said, I'm not showing up, and they still get it done. And I think Odell will still get it done, even though he didn't show up. The look that bothered me more than anything, you're catching passes from Johnny Manziel. You're hanging out with Johnny Manziel and putting the social media is blowing up. That guy is the ultimate example of how not to run an NFL career. Like, what are you doing? So I had a problem with who are you choosing to hang out with? That would scare me if I'm John Mara looking at a long-term contract for Odell Beckham and he's hanging out with Johnny Manziel. That stuff scares me, man.
Bob Glauber with us right now from Newsday on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Does he get a deal before the season starts? Does he get a new deal?
I don't think so. Because I think that it sets a very dangerous precedent when you go, first of all, 2 years before a deal is over. That's one thing. And you're looking at a team that has its contractual rights basically for 4 more years, including the ability to use the franchise tag. And I just don't think that Jerry Reese is going to do that, or John Mara. Now, I could be wrong. They may do it, but what is it in you? I mean, you give this guy all the money, and what if he hasn't really shown the ability to grow up? Do you really want to do that? And then you're going to get into a situation where you may have to trade him because he's not proven to be a reliable guy. I know Jerry Reese. I've seen him operate before, and I go back to his first year as a general manager, 2007. Michael Strahan didn't show up for the offseason at all. A lot of speculation that he was not happy with his contract, made $4.5 million. Jerry Reese did not budge. And that's a Hall of Fame player you're talking about, an established Hall of Fame player going into what turned out to be his last year. Jerry Reese held firm, and Jeremy Shockey was unhappy with his contract, and he shipped him out of New York. So I don't think Jerry's nervous about this one. I don't think that they feel like they got to just give him the world. Because you look at the great contracts of receivers now, none of them, I'm talking about Julio Jones, Antonio Bryant, none of them got the deals in after the third year. It was all fourth year or later. And that's very important on those rookie deals. NFL doesn't negotiate these CBAs for the benefit of anyone but themselves, and they got a good deal on that one. So I think Beckham stays at that 1.8. I think he's got to play his way to a new contract. And next year, even though he's supposed to make 8.5, then I think they give it to him. But I think they need another year to see what this guy's all about.
Bob, one more for you before we let you run. Jason Peters, 35 years old, went to mini camp yesterday, said he wanted some more stability in his contract. They gave him an extra year. Now he has 3 years left on his contract at 35. I know that the Eagles did this probably in a large reason to create some cap flexibility, but I was surprised with how they could have got out of this contract after this year.
Yeah, a little bit. But Jason Peters has been a really good player. And
sure.
Now you talk about a guy who was sticking to his guns with a contract. Jason Peters has been very gutsy with his contract negotiations in the past. And he has won as a result. So I think this is another example of that. And, the guy is a bit of a freak of nature physically. And I think just despite the fact that he is that old, they look at him as a reliable guy. And when you can get a left tackle who's reliable and you hold on to him, you do that as long as you possibly can until the wheels fall off.
Just my thought process on this was, and I know the cap flexibility played a big part in this, because in Philadelphia, we're all sitting here thinking, how are they spending this money? How are they getting some of these players? And we all hear all offseason long they have no cap room. With that being said, though, when I break it down and look at it, and what happens if he falls off the cliff this year? Because durability's been a problem. If he falls off the cliff this year, then you're stuck with him for 2 more years, and that could happen.
Yeah, that could very well happen. But those are the chances you take. And I think Howie Roseman, if he's done anything over his time with the Eagles, has shown an ability to be very flexible with the salary cap. And even if it looks bad, he'll find a way to, make it all work. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Mike Tannenbaum, who was with the Jets, kind of a trader Mike type guy. Now he's doing a lot of the same things with Miami, and very similar approaches to the cap. Very dynamic, very aggressive, and you know what? If you got to eat it, at some point you got to do it, because the cap keeps going up by a healthy amount each year, and I think he's willing to gamble that they'll be okay moving forward.
Bob, great stuff. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
You got it, Zach. Thanks for having me, Ben.
There's Bob Glauber from Newsday, covers the NFL for Newsday, joining us on the Zach Gelb Show. Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Okay, we're saving this for the end of the show. Time to lay into Odell Beckham Jr. I have told you before, I like Odell Beckham Jr. I have told you before, I have done an event with Odell Beckham Jr. where he took pictures with every single kid at the event. I happen to like Odell a lot. I think he's great for the game, and he's also a great talent. But you need to learn when to stop being a spoiled baby, and you need to learn when to grow up. Because what he did today is petulant behavior. It's inane behavior, and it's stupid behavior. He wore shoes with ESPN on them, TMZ, and the New York Post, and I'm looking at the picture now. He crossed out the New York Post with a big red X mark. He wrote, shh, on TMZ. What are you doing, Odell? How stupid can you be? Your general manager and Jerry Reese, he told you to grow up. This is not being a professional. This is being stupid. It's time to grow up. We know you are a great player. We know you are a great talent. But you need to act like a professional, especially when you have won nothing in this league. You don't have a playoff win, let alone a Super Bowl trophy on your resume. You need to think about the team before you think about your individual self. Because right now, Odell Beckham has been the biggest storyline. And it's not the media's fault. It's his fault right now. And I didn't rip him for going on the boat. I didn't care about him going on the boat. But the way that season ended, and some other things that happened last year with his behavior, it is now a distraction. Now, you could forget about it if he goes on the football field and he dominates. But this rhetoric will reappear the minute after what he did today, the minute he has one bad game, whether that's fair or not. And the next freak out he has, that is going to be another thing we will talk about. It happened under Coughlin. They couldn't control it. It happened under McAdoo. We will see now how they control it. When Jerry Reese, though, the general manager, the man your agent is going to have to negotiate with to get a new deal, sends a very clear message to you where he tells you to grow up. Right now, it appears to me that Odell Beckham heard that message, took a piece of paper, crumbled up that message, and threw it. That's what it looks like. Because someone that grows up And someone that be a professional and wants to be a professional does not go out on that practice field today with the New York Post, TMZ, and ESPN, and I'm a Patriot fan, telling you this. ESPN, everything that happened with the Deflategate. I should not like ESPN. If I was in that position, even I wouldn't do that. But Odell Beckham does that. It's stupid. It's really, 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 really stupid. Because you're creating a target on your back once again where people will look to take you down and be critical of you the minute you slip up. Like I said, I like Odell Beckham a lot. I've met him before a lot. We did a really good interview together. It was a whole lot of fun. It's tough to defend him now. He better have a monster year this year, and he better tone it down. Because if he doesn't, this will have an ugly ending. And I've told you, he deserves more money. He deserves a new contract. He is better than a $1.8 million player per year. And he could say OTAs weren't about the contract. If he wants to say that, fine. I personally believe a little bit of it, if not even more than a little bit of it, had to do with the contract situation. And if he just wouldn't have showed up and didn't start with his tweets, then I would say Odell is handling this perfectly. But when you go on your Twitter and you go on a rant on Twitter and you start telling people you want it more than ever, you want it so bad, you're as motivated as you could humanly possibly be, and you're working as hard as ever, when you tweet that, you need to show up to voluntary OTAs. Even though they're voluntary, you need to show up. Because you said you're motivated as ever. You're as hardworking as ever. Well, if those things are true, then you show up and prove it. A little less talking, Odell. A little less actions by wearing stupid cleats with that petulant behavior, and a little bit more showing me on the field that you're a changed person. It's time to grow up.